What is a plea agreement? Now, if you watched my previous video about plea bargaining, you know that plea bargaining is the process by which a prosecutor and a criminal defense attorney representing the person charged negotiates, bargain for an agreement that will allow a defendant to plead guilty to a lesser or reduced charge. But now I want to talk about the actual agreement itself. First of all, you should know that over 90% of all criminal cases filed in the United States are resolved by way of what we're going to talk about this evening, which is a plea agreement. So, what is a plea agreement? A plea agreement is the actual document or agreement that results from the plea bargain itself. And so at the end of the day, after the prosecutor and the defense attorney, they bargain, if you will, they come to certain terms. And of course, the defense attorney has to discuss those terms with his or her client, the defendant. And if that person agrees, you then end up with an agreement between the defendant, the person is charged, and the state of Indiana that lays out certain terms. And that document itself, that document might include the following things. It might include, and it probably will, whether or not the person is going to serve any what we call executed time, meaning that whether or not the person will have to actually spend time in jail or prison. If they're not going to spend time in jail or prison, then it talks about perhaps how the person will be supervised. Maybe the person will be placed on probation, or maybe they will be placed on what we call community corrections, which means that they might have to be confined to their home, or they might have to be at least placed on some type of monitor to where the courts know where they are and what they're doing at all times. Any number of things. It might also include the fact that certain charges will be completely dismissed. In other words, the person is allowed to plead guilty to one particular charge, but maybe all of the other charges are dismissed. Sometimes the agreement will also include whether or not the person is allowed to reduce the charge. Sometimes the charge will start off as a felony charge, but there's a process to where that felony charge can be reduced to a misdemeanor such that the person never actually has a felony on their record. And there's a whole other host of things that can be included in this agreement, including things like community service work, or whether or not the person should take anger management classes or parenting classes or any number of things, whether or not the person has to pay restitution. But the bottom line is the plea bargaining process results and produces an agreement. That agreement is reduced to writing. And that, my friends, is the plea agreement itself. The plea agreement is then submitted to the judge for his or her approval. And then that is officially, I guess, the end of that particular case if and when that agreement is accepted by the court.